I just finished my first year at uni, meaning it was all clubs and freshers every day. Or so I thought. I went clubbing 2 times throughout the year, and I regretted both of them. Like, I realized clubbing ain't for me, and before I got to uni, I never really vibed with it. For me, I'd always leave an hour of getting there. An hour was probably my high score. Like, I don't know, it just wasn't my vibe. So I didn't know what I'd expect to change once I got to uni. Because I do know some people turn into party animals, and I don't want to FOMO, I didn't want to miss out on things, but I wasn't missing out on shit, bro. I'd just rather just be at home chilling. Drinking is a weird one, because if you tell people you don't do coke or weed, it's understandable, I hope. But when you don't drink, people look at you like you're mentally ill. Some people couldn't comprehend it, which is wild. I don't suggest forwardly telling people you don't drink. Rather, let it come organically and natural, because this is the mistake where I made. If you're upfront about your teetotally, then mate, you just look like a cunt. You just look like a party pooper. I tell people I wasn't drinking, and they'll say stuff like, just have one. It's nothing. Have one sip, bro. Just have one. I don't know, but the vibe I was getting is that they were kind of trying to compensate for their actions, making their choices look less harmful if I took a sip. I'm not going to play victim here. The way I went about it was wrong. I'd miss some of my friends' birthdays because of my unnecessarily strict rule. I knew for certain I didn't want to drink, but I just didn't know how I was going to actually go about this with the social aspects, and I was still calculating in my head, like, I don't want to drink, but then just putting myself in those situations, I didn't really want to do, but I wasn't sure of myself at that point. And bear in mind, this was all only 3 months ago. But yeah, this isn't the way to go about it, because when I didn't go to those social events because of my non-drinking rule, I only made myself feel more lonely, and that made me overthink more, because then I started blaming my loneliness on me not drinking, which wasn't the case. It was just because I was just being a spiritual, uptight douche. That's where I went wrong, and that's where hopefully you can learn from me. When you decide to make a life change, whether it's not drinking, not smoking, not going clubbing, then be aware. Beware of the moral high ground that maybe you may not even be aware of, but you kind of put yourself on a pedestal because you're making this bold life choice against the masses. You think you're bigger and badder, but that's not the case. And then you start blaming the symptoms of it, like loneliness, on that choice, which isn't the case, because big man thing, no one cares if you don't drink. It's how you go about it. This was a tricky one for me. Bear in mind, this was only so recently, because I am very certain in the choice I've made. However, it was my distaste in others because of my choice, if that makes sense. Again, just going back to the moral high ground. And now I realize, and I'm glad I freaking realized this, but I'm just so content in the choice I made. And I'm glad I realized this now. I've still gone through with a choice. However, I am so content to the point where I don't really give a fuck about whether you drink or not. 3 months ago, when I was just making these choices, it was quite blurry, and I really was moving like a victim. That's where the spiritual douche comes in, because yes, it's your big life choice you decided to make, but let people do what they want, and it doesn't affect you. This is coming from me now. And it wasn't that not drinking made me lonely, it was the fact that I was projecting my choice in others, the distaste in others' lifestyle from my choice, which makes no sense. This makes me appreciate YouTube pranksters like Gideon, Kai Sanat, Jordan Levine, because they're just spreading some good vibes, and they're saying stuff like, don't vape, they don't drink like that, they don't smoke, and they're doing it in a way which is so organic to an audience that would benefit from it. With drinking and clubbing, I feel like the good way to go about it is to still go out with your friends, but don't sip. This doesn't mean going out 3-5 times a week either. Yeah, go out if you really want to, but don't make a big deal that you're not drinking. Just order some ginger ale and just chill. You don't need to explain how you're 6 months sober. Imagine explaining the pros and cons of not drinking to your mate at the bar who's on their third drink. Like, read the room, you know what I'm saying? And if people do ask, just say you're not drinking. Keep it minimal. You don't need to elaborate. Just say you're not drinking for the moment. Don't make it a thing, because when you say you don't drink, people will actually look at themselves in a way like, oh, either they're looking at you like, oh, who's this guy? Or they're looking at their choices because they can't live a day without a pint. So it's just finding that middle ground of social and just concealing your intention. Remember that no one cares if you don't drink. It's how you go about it. And more importantly, just don't kill the mood. If you're gonna kill the mood, just don't go out in the first place. Use this as an opportunity to be confident without the liquor, to have fun without a crutch. How much self-respect would you gain if you went up to that girl without needing a drink? Love.